won't fight the Phantom. He finds you.
G'day everyone, this is Expand the Phantom podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to these podcasts via YouTube or whatever is your favorite podcast app. My name's Dan Fraser and tonight I'm joined by the regular crew, Stephen East and Jermaine Parker. How are you guys? Let's start with you, Stephen, Victoria there.
I'm doing well, Dan. Thanks for asking. It's been a nice uh, sunny February day down here, which couldn't be said early in the week where we thought we were in the middle of winter down here in Ballarat. But now the days come good and summer's back here. So, it's been nice.
Excellent to have some good weather for the weekend. And you, Germ, over on the west of the continent?
Yeah, staying alive, busy working, and just trying to stay calm and looking forward to tonight. This has been a little bit of a delay doing this podcast, but I'm looking forward to it because I actually enjoyed this annual.
Yeah, all right. Well,
That's a bonus.
spoilers.
Mm.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Like as you said, this is a bit of a delayed podcast because the annual itself was delayed through binding issues in Sydney. We were talking in one of our recent recordings about making this episode 299C as we tried to pad out towards episode 300 when we were joined by the daily and the Sunday artists. But one thing led to another, and suddenly this is episode 301. I'm a smidge disappointed that we didn't do a 299C, but that's okay. Episode 301 is going to be a ripper.
Obviously, we are going to review the through 2025 annual, which is obviously the monster theme. So for regular through readers, you know all about it. But for those around the world who are following on, who might have not got some of this, we thought we'll open up with a little bit about a through annual, about the history of them, and then we'll kind of go some overview thoughts of this one. And then we're going to actually go into the stories as well. So a bit of a quick bio on the fruit annuals itself is, now annuals on its own is nothing new. British Comics published them in hardcover albums during the 50s to the 80s. I'm sure a lot of us have seen them. My girls have I've seen Danger Mouse ones. I've seen an Asterix one. My girls have even got some Bunty and Binty and Minty ones as well, which were from their Nana as well. And Frew published their first annual back in 1991, and it was an instant hit. Rumours are that it sold out overnight in newsagents around the world, and many collectors brought dozens as investments. Now, I know of some people that brought more than dozens. I know of one person in particular who was rumored to have brought 1,000. Believe that if you will. He actually now owns Frew, so again, a rumor. Now, ever since, Frew has released an annual on the back of this success. Bar the odd year, which we believe there's been about 3, a replica edition of the Frew comics have also been released with the annual. And look, let's be honest, the first couple were a great success and were loved by everyone. At the moment, some still love the replicas and others don't love the replicas, but they are a staple along with the annual and they kind of do fit hand in hand. Now, since the Frew Crew has stood in the gap left by Jim Shepard, they have released theme annuals, which I must admit has reinvigorated a new excitement, reinvigorated, good words, of the annuals to me with themes like War with artists Cy Barry, Graham Nolan. They've had a Girl Phantom one, which is probably my favorite one, along with the War one. Cowboy Phantom, which was interesting. Animals of Eden. And now, in 2025, we have the monster theme. So, gents, what are your overall thoughts of the monster theme through annual for 2025?
Well, you've already said that you liked it. I'm probably I'm not fussed one way or the other, to be honest. It's nice to have a theme. Monsters are not my go necessarily, especially the science fictiony type ones. And appreciate as we work through, there's going to be some stories where there's pretend monsters and that sort of thing. But yeah, monsters and science fiction are not necessarily my go with the Phantom. So yeah, probably not as enamored as you were, Germ. What do you think, Steve?
I don't mind the monster theme. In regards to monsters and comics, I've just been watching Creature Commandos on Binge, I think, which is based on the DC comic. I think of the same name, which is got a whole bunch of different monsters and stuff going out trying to save the world. So I'm not opposed to the theme. But I've got mixed views on the annual. Like I like the idea, but I don't think every story hit the mark.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I think in terms of like the bits that I liked, and we'll start with by talking about the cover, of course, but I really liked the cover. Clayton Barton, I think, did a really good job, and this did actually set a good tone. I picked this up while I opened my envelope and saw and dragged it out, but I also saw it on newsagent shelves, and I thought that is something that maybe not your ordinary Phantom fan will pick up. So in the same way that I just said it's not necessarily my go, there'll be other people who love monster themes, love monsters, and the idea of having, vampires and Frankensteins and mummies and whatever this fish god guy thing is down here. I think that might be really appealing to people. So I'll be interested to see if a few more non-Phantom fans necessarily picked it up. But your thoughts on the covers, guys?
Oh, 10 out of 10 with the cover. I think I'll just reiterate what you just said there, Dan. Like the way it's structured, the way it just draws your attention to it. You know what this is all about, and the Phantom's outnumbered by the monsters. How's he going to get past it? It's a striking cover.
Well, I agree with the front cover. I think Clayton does do a good job. I think some of his covers tend to be a little bit sparse in the background, and they're more just like but I think with this one, not having a background and just having the Phantom surrounded by monsters actually works well because there's a lot of window dressing. Like there's the 2025 annual, there's, a lot of that type of stuff. And so I think not having a background works with that. The back cover, which is done by Mike, I got absolutely no idea. I don't believe there's any credits in the
There
thing
isn't. I was
for.
hoping you guys would know that one.
Yeah, so I don't know who the back cover is, but it's definitely Mike. Maybe it looks like Griffiths or something like that as well. I do like the back cover. Again, I like the Phantom with and it's got the horror elements and stuff like that. Let me just quickly, I actually don't like monsters at all. But so the reason why I actually like this was because I actually enjoyed some of the stories, and when I first saw it was monsters, I thought, oh, great, I'm not going to like this. But I actually enjoyed some of the stories, and I'll tell you which stories they are later on. And so it was kind of like I was surprised by it, and it was better than what I was expecting. I think that's why I'm a lot more positive about the annual because I had very, very, very low expectations because like you, Dan, monsters and the Phantom don't really fit in my opinion normally.
Fair enough. Well, just to touch on the back cover, I think it is worth just a little bit of time on it. I suspect, you look at it and it could easily have been a submission for a front cover, just the way that it's mocked up, and you can see the Phantom banner going across the top pretty easily. It's a shame. I think they do need to start putting the credits for the rear cover artist as well in the front, because it's a pity for the artist here that we can't be singing their praises, because I actually really like this as an image, and given that it was hidden, if you like, in the newspaper shelf with the replica, it was a really pleasant surprise when you open the plastic bag and drag this out. So anyway, speaking of the replica, we'll touch on it briefly. You've already given us a bit of an overview there, Germ. It's a replica of Frew number 35. It's one of those ones that opens in a landscape format, so trap for young players. Don't tear the spine as you try to open it in a portrait style. What did you think of the inclusion of replica number 35, which is the next one in the sequence as they count up in the annuals?
This is the age-old debate, or it has been the debate for the last few years anyway. I haven't read it. I didn't read it. Maybe I will after we record. But yeah, the next question will be, if we don't have the replica, what do we have? And the answers, I think, are what we've had in the past, like posters or cards or another mask or something like that.
So
at the moment, it's a good go-to, but
it'd
be nice to see something different. But we're up to 35. Where do we go to? 40, 50?
No, we just stop where we are. So why couldn't you have a poster of these two covers? of
Well, that'd be
inside.
good.
Like,
Actually,
because
that's not a bad idea. Have a poster size. It could even be, if you want to, you can either go two posters or have a reversible poster. Like if you,
Okay.
I reckon the front poster has more of an adventure type feel to it, whereas the back cover, the rear cover has more of that horror feel to it. So yeah, if you depending on what mood you're in, go, reverse it.
because if you're having it as a poster, this is the other advantage, is even if it's, let's just say it's an A3 one that gets folded into four, so it's 4 pages, you'll be able to fit in another story by not including the replica. So instead of this annual being 228 pages, it might be 240 pages or something like that, which makes it thicker. It makes it. So I just look, I understand the history and the nostalgic feel of having a replica, but me personally, I would rather have an extra story in the annual and maybe a poster of the cover.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm still one who's an advocate of the replicas. I'm not someone who's ever going to be able to buy, you know, the early issue throughs, and so I keep these in a separate folder where I can flick through and pretend I've got through 1, 2, 3, 4 through to 35. I like being able to do that, and for what it's worth, on this occasion, and it's just happenstance, I know, but as I suggested, there might be some people who pick this book up who are not necessarily regular Phantom fans. And the coincidence of getting the young Phantom and having the origin story of the Phantom to come with it, I thought was pretty cool. So if you do get people who are new to the comic or coming back to the comic after a while, it might be a nice induction or a refresher on where the Phantom come from just by happening to have this story here. Yeah, that was probably my thoughts on that one.
I was going to say the other thing that I liked about this annual was the fact that it actually had color in it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. And quite a lot of color too, really. The first, what is it, 50, no, 70, 80 something pages are all color, which is a good chunk. It's a good third of the overall book is in color, and probably more than we've seen in annuals before.
The beauty about the color as well, which will show up some if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it as we kind of scroll through, is that the color is actually of good quality as well.
Yes.
Like too many times in a free comic, it's been it's been muddy, it's been dark, but especially Giancarlo's color work, which I believe is actually done by his daughter, Flavio or something. I believe it is. I'm gonna butcher that name, so I apologize ahead of time. But yeah, her colors actually look good on this type of paper, and Jason Paulos's colors look quite good as well. So I liked it. Just as an interesting, I couldn't find my daughter, my oldest daughter, and I came in setting up. This was the last room I actually checked, and she was actually in here, sitting where I am now, and she was reading the annual. You can see a photo of it. I've actually, you take a photo of these rare circumstances, and she was reading it, and she enjoyed the color. And she read all the color stories, and then when she got to the black and white ones, she actually lost interest and didn't actually want to go further. And I actually said, "Well, look, there's actually some better stories as you go, the ones in black and white." She goes, "Yeah, but I think I like the color. I think I like color in my comics." So I think it's just worth pointing that out that a 10-year-old girl, when she's reading her dad's Phantom comics, she likes the ones in color.
I think you may be absolutely right. The other thing, I suppose, with the black and white um, stories is, other than the Felmang Kuma the creature, they start to get a lot denser and wordy as well. So probably not quite the age bracket of your daughter as well. So,
Yeah.
but take your point. Maybe she would have powered through and just looked at the pictures a bit more if they were
Mm.
color as well.
It's also worth making mention that those stories, I don't know about Felmang's story, but all the other stories were actually designed for black and white as well. So it would have been a lot costlier for Frew to go through and color them.
Comments on the color, Steve?
Nothing that hasn't already been said.
No worries. Well, one thing that I did miss from this, and you talk about it being 228 pages. I'd have loved to boost it out to 236 or something, simply with the addition of a contents page and a splash page at the start of each story. That was one thing that I was, to say I was immediately disappointed is probably a bit strong, but you open it up and boom, you're straight into a story. I would have liked to see a title page so you can see what stories are there, about how long they are. Do I have any favorite creators here that I'm just going to jump to those stories? And then, yeah, a splash page to divide each of I think there's only one splash page in the whole book in the end, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's the vampires one.
The Vampire of Carpathia. That's the only one that got a splash page, and so I would have liked to see that.
The gap between the stories was probably harder with Jason with the first two stories, which were drawn by the same artist and colored in the same artist, and they got the same style. The others were okay. Well, like I agree with you, but the others were manageable. But with Jason Paulus's, which they're both part stories, so they in a sense they kind of end in the middle of the story by design. But I actually, when I was reading it, I read the first story, and then I'm going to the second story, and I'm going, hang on. And then I had to go back another page and go, oh, okay, this is actually a new story. And, like switch your mindset of like, okay, we can park that story. Now we need to start reading a new story. So it's, I think,
especially because both of those two have been written to have two or three pages of the story first, and then the title panel. So there is actually a splash page for The Phantom by Gaslight, but it's on the fourth page of the actual story. So I did exactly the same as you. You just got confused. You get to page 34 and it says to be continued, and then page 35 you're like, oh, this is the continuation. They've just put them back to back. Oh no, hang on, they haven't. It's so that threw me for a bit too.
but look, that's a fairly minor issue with it. But in saying that, it's probably the biggest minor or the biggest problem that I had with the annual was that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And if that's the biggest problem we've got, we're off to a good start.
Yeah, agree with that. All right. So as I said, it feels bad to say immediately disappointed, but then impressed with what we saw from there on. So let's dive into the stories. We've started talking about the first one and the second one, both of which were by Andrew Constant and Jason Paulus as the artist. The Ghost and the Wolves, part one of The Ghost and the Wolves, kicked us off. Steve, do you want to give us a bit of a run through or a summary of the plot for us?
Yes, certainly. Okay, so the year is 1867 as the Ghost Who Walks rides into a ghost town in Texas, USA. But it's not a ghost that has townsfolk all riled up. It's something with a little more bite. The Phantom has sworn to fight injustice in all its forms, and a woman being held against her will definitely qualifies as an injustice. However, is there more to this woman than meets the eye? Will the Phantom ever meet her again, or will it be one of his descendants many miles away? Let's just hope it's not by the light of a full moon.
There's a lot to talk about with this one, but one of the things I'm going to highlight straight away, the art of Jason Paulus, and particularly, I just talked about no splash panels to start stories, the splash page. Those pages have had an impact.
Absolutely. We're talking about the Blood Red Mood. Is that in this one?
Yeah, you'll see on my screen, Steve,
Yeah.
page 26, and then a couple of pages after that, there's another big double page spread as well.
That's with the two werewolves
fantastic.
fighting.
Yeah. I'll first think about the title page and the ones with the big werewolves. I thought, great, and the art is really popping. Big clear panels. The color just makes it pop. You can see everything that's going on. It's not overcomplicated. It's not filled with stuff that's not important, and it just helps the story to flow along nice and quick. You don't have to think about it, which, as a comic, should be the way it's done.
Yeah, I did like. Look, I haven't been the greatest supporter of some of Andrew Constant's non-Kid Phantom stories. I have to admit, and I will admit, that these two stories I actually did enjoy. I enjoyed kind of having the flashback with the Wild West theme. That was kind of fun because, I think the Phantom works well as a cowboy, so that was kind of fun. But I just away in modern day in Morristown, Bengala, and you got the so I just yeah I don't know I enjoyed this story more than what I thought I was going to, and I thought Andrew made this story work quite well, and I think Jason Paulos is an inspired artist for anything gothic or monsterish.
Absolutely. Pulse's art really suits this type of theme.
Mm.
And it's not the first werewolf type story that Andrew's given us. I can't remember exactly what issues the other one's in. I should have done my homework before coming in. But he's got a couple up his sleeve.
Yeah. I liked also this bit on, what was it, page 16 as well, when Diana picks up that they're being tailed as well. And it's something small, but it's nice to be able to see that Diana's being shown as someone capable as well. And it's a fairly common criticism that we have, that a lot of the time Diana's just is used as a foolish tool to be able to, as like a damsel in distress tool where, she picked up it as well. So it was just something small, and it's like, I thought that was good. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think,
don't talk too soon because it's not consistent throughout the rest of the stories in the annual.
yeah, I know, but we're just talking about the stories that we can.
This one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I enjoyed it as well as far as werewolves stories go. And certain little things like it was interesting having the character Argent, her name was in the end, one eye coloured correctly and the other noise behind it.
So what's going on there? And then
You thought that too,
turns out
Steve?
that it's actually supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a plot device. It
Yeah.
probably took me 5 or 6 panels before I believed that it was probably done on purpose. But but no, I really liked the pace of this story. I love as you've got on the screen there, Jern, those big splash pages. I thought it just popped as soon as you turned the page and that one was there. You enjoyed that. And look, to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed that we only got part one in this story, like in the annual. That one of the things I think you should do in the annual is tell the whole story. You've got the page count to do it. This is why they do it. Maybe there's a bunch of people who only pick up the annual and you're trying to convince them to pick up the next issue as well. So maybe it's a marketing tool that I'm not clever enough to grasp. But I would have preferred to see the whole story in one go.
Yeah, no, reckons very much that, oh, here's your taster. Now buy another issue to get the conclusion.
They
Yeah.
did that with was it the 75th anniversary one, which had the Andrew Constant and Jason Paula story as well, I believe. The lady from Kid Phantom. Can't remember her
Oh,
name.
Captain Cleaver,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then
Ghost of the Ship's Past or whatever it was.
yeah, and then there was a Peter Anderson story as well, which was like a part story, and then they had the second part in a later story. So I think you're right, it's definitely a marketing tool. And there's some good strategic shadows and arms and stuff that keep the issue PG as well, which is nice.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's also a couple of little winks and nods, like they've just been watching the movie American Werewolf in London, and there's
Yes.
I think it had a sequel called American Werewolf in Paris. I remember seeing that one first and thinking, this is 20 odd years ago, thinking, oh, horror movie, and it turned out it was a comedy.
Move on to Nema then. Now, when Ghost in the Walls was a 31-page part one, Nema is a 14-page self-contained story in the Gaslight universe. So we're familiar with that one. But I think this is the first time we've seen the character of Nema in the Gaslight universe, which is certainly a place where you would expect to find a few monsters. So only a 14-pager set in the 1800s. Steve, can you give us the overview of this one?
Certainly. So, as Dan said, it's in the Phantom by Gaslight series, and it's set in 1890. A series of strange murders are happening down at the London docks, and the murderer is sending a message to the Phantom, who just happens to be in town. The Phantom, of course, investigates, but is he being lured into a trap? He will need all of his jungle reflexes to avert the danger heading his way. Will the Phantom thwart this mysterious enemy, or will they be left with a burning desire for revenge?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy this story as much as the first one.
See, I still
so-
liked it. I probably didn't like it as much as the first one, maybe, but I did. I don't mind these Phantom by Gaslight ones.
No, I was just going to say that I probably liked this one better than the werewolves, to be honest. It- it's a funny sort of one because I quite like the Gaslight era. Just wish they didn't have all the monsters and the magic and the weird stuff in it. So I like having the Phantom in that aspect of London in the 1890s London, and it was really a quite enjoyable story until we get to Nemo and it's this odd fish monster. Who's related to Captain Nemo somehow. So I enjoyed the first probably half of this story, and then I didn't hate the end of it. But again, it sort of strayed from my normal expectations of a Phantom story, I suppose.
A little bit brutal round about this page here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I thought that. Oh, he's gone a bit too far here. I reckon he's gone a little bit too violent. More of a I don't know, was it the Dynamite Last Phantom type thing almost?
yeah,
It got a little bit gimmicky with like like the Holy Cross and the Holy Water type of, I know it was accelerant and stuff, but it kind of felt like that. Like it's like, oh, come on. It just felt a little bit gimmicky, for me.
Yeah, I didn't think of it as holy water, but yeah, it just so happens that
Yeah.
he's got a test tube of something in his belt. Well done.
I think
But
it was accelerant, so
yeah, it was some sort of accelerant, like
yeah, but it
not
just
petrol.
kind of felt like, like was it the Constantine movie or something where, they're walking around with holy water and
Oh yeah.
crosses, and it was just like and I know that kind of happened in a story later on in this annual as well, and I don't know. And I think this is where the Phantom and monsters don't always fit, is because sometimes it can just be a little bit gimmicky. And when you have the guys too strong, the Phantom can't really fight them and he's a bit
yeah.
useless. But in saying that, I'm intrigued where Captain Nemo is going to fit into this. Because as a kid, one of my most favorite movies was the Disney 20,000 Under the League Sea movie. I really enjoyed that movie. So, I have no problems with it. I enjoyed it. I read the book and stuff like that, but I just don't know if it fits with my Phantom.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Well, time will tell because I reckon there might be a continuation. Like this was a self-contained story, but it looks
Mm.
like there could be more. And once again, I reckon the artwork there is phenomenal. I think once again, Jason Paulus's art really suits the style of story.
One thing I did really like, and you just had it up on screen there, Germ, but he's done it a couple of times in this book. So on page 46, for instance, and then again on the last page of this story, Jason's played quite loose with the borders between panels, and they've sort of merged together and blended together. And I really like the way that he's done that to make the whole page a montage. Yeah, I think that's quite effective. So.
And
The
particularly on
art
page
goes
40,
right to the to the edge. It was
Yes.
good.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
But then you look at pages like on 47, you got the lamp post which spreads across three panels. Like the three panels are different, but the lamp post is a constant. And then it turns out that it's a major aspect in the next one. But then
Mm.
over on 49, yeah, the matchstick flying across like 3 or 4 panels, and just
Yeah.
those sort of ways of using different elements and using the frames to a different dimension, I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great points. Great pickups there, Steve.
Well, let's power through. Let's get to the third story in the annual, which is looking back. It's Andrew Constant is just the author of the the author of the color, certainly, as we go through. So looking back is a sequel. Now we talk about marketing clues or whatever. I wonder how many people are going to pick this up, read this, and go, you know what? I need to go back and read that graphic novel, The Ghost and the Monster. So this is a sequel, and that story finished with Frankenstein's monster. What we thought was living happily ever after, but now we come back to him again. So, Steve, what can you tell us about the plot for this one?
Okay, so Frankenstein's monster is now living a peaceful life, harvesting his crops in the Bengalan jungle when the Phantom pops by for a visit. He wants to know more about an adventure that he and the 17th Phantom shared back in the 1890s. That seems to be a popular decade for this annual. It turns out that Frank wasn't the only monster roaming the streets at night back then, and the Phantom would like to know more. How did Frank and the 17th Phantom stop these monstrous bank robberies from the past? Could the Phantom put this new monster's skills to better use?
Mm.
What do you
Now,
think, Jen?
I panned, and I'm talking about panned the first Monster graphic novel. Like I was dead set against it. There was a lot of elements in that was not my Phantom. Like, the Phantom drinking elixir to get all strong, having a jail in the Skull Cave, like just things like that was just not Phantom-like. And to be honest, it was a little bit disappointing seeing that being actually kind of approved by Frew and in a story. However, in saying that, so when I saw there was this story, I went, oh no, I'm going to be disappointed again. But I actually enjoyed this story. And this, out of the new stories, this will probably be, so and when I'm talking about the new stories, I'm talking about the first three and the one at the end. And no, the first four stories and the one at the end, which were created by Frew. This would be my second favorite of all of those stories, not including the Team Phantom stories. Of the Frew created stories, this is my second most favorite out of all of them. I really enjoyed it. I thought Frankenstein and the Phantom worked well. There was a little bit of there was some good chemistry between them. I enjoyed the detective
Yeah.
element. Didn't actually mind the whole Golem thing, which we will see again. But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. And this was the story that my daughter actually enjoyed the most of the ones that she read as well. And for her, it was the artwork. She really enjoyed the artwork and it spoke to her. And it was the most eye-catching was this artwork. So read into that as you will.
I think that mentioning the artwork, I think it probably does work well for younger audience. It's more cartoony than, say, Paulus's was or is. And I absolutely agree with you. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the first half of this annual. I think Andrew and the various artists have knocked it out of the park with what they've done, and we can see Gollum up here in the on the screen now, and I like his character as well, like
Yeah.
being forced to do things that he doesn't really want to do, and even though he's fighting against Frank and the Phantom, he's also helping them along the way. If you want to beat me, here, just do this, will you? Quick, hurry up, please.
I'd have to agree with what both of you guys have said there. I really liked Giancarlo's art. I probably was one that seemed a bit jagged and rough when we first saw it a few years ago. But I've really come to enjoy his artwork. And I liked the team up, the buddy team up between Frankenstein's monster and the Phantom in this one. The character of Gollum I was less fussed by, and I thought that the ending was probably a little bit trite or sappy, and it stepped on. And this is one of the things I sort of anticipated in the Monster album that when we heard that it was coming out, I thought we might see a Who's story, and for Gollum to basically usurp Who's, no spoilers, but as to go on to Eden at the end, that's yeah. I missed Who's in this one.
That's my
Yeah.
one critique of it too. I don't like that. Yeah, we've got the final page there. I don't like that. Everything else, I really like.
Really? See, for me, this made the story for me.
Nah,
Really?
didn't like it.
Yeah, I really liked it because I liked the full circle element of where, like where you got the Phantom on page 81 is laughing his head off. And the Frankenstein's like obviously doesn't get the joke, and he's like, well, he's come back and now he's on Eden. So it's like, yeah, I understand it would have been nice to see his, but to be honest, his always he kind of annoyed me anyway. So I never really liked it. And it's a we're probably never gonna if we never see another story with Golem in it, this Golem on the Isle of Eden, I'm gonna be happy. But it was just
Yeah.
a nice ending to having these guys, much like Frankenstein, that are hated, that are abused, that are misused by people with bad intentions, that they're happy. And yeah, I don't know.
I'm,
Maybe it got me in the wrong moment or in the good moment, but I actually really enjoyed the ending.
I'm not saying it's not nice. I think it is nice, but as Dan said, there's already a protector there on Eden. It's his, and where's he in the thing? Maybe he could be standing beside Gollum or something I don't know, but you know, I just
Mm.
thought, like you said, it's stepping on a few toes.
It's
But
a
yeah,
it's a it's a minor point in an otherwise quite good
very minor
story.
point.
Yeah, yeah.
Very minor. Just looking for something to critique.
Well, that's exactly right. Otherwise, what's the point of having a podcast if you can't find something? All right. So generally speaking, happy with that. And so that means, we've come to the end of the color pages and we're enjoying the annual so far.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
basically what 3 out of 3. 3 stories, 100% strike
Yeah.
rate. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So we then go to the first of the not well, I want to say reprint stories, but this has correct me if I'm wrong, Jem, you will. This is the first time this story has appeared in a Fru, is that right?
No, about 946 at a guess. Around 940 something was when it last appeared. So
Okay.
you're looking at in the 80s. So for,
Yeah. Well,
almost,
certainly
35 plus years.
it was certainly first published in Egmont, issue 13 of 1988. So, yeah, late 80s, early 90s at worst for its appearance in a Fru. And I guess one thing that did strike me, and I did enjoy about this, is the familiarity of the art of Hans Lindahl. I've always enjoyed Lindahl's artwork. And Gollum, this story is written by Johann L. Borgnay, or some other pronunciation that's more accurate than that. Steve, do you want to give us a rundown of the story of Gollum?
No worries. So after having a Gollum in the last story, this story is called Gollum. Right. It is in 1500s Prague, anti-Semitic rhetoric is beginning to plague the once safe haven of Jewish refugees. As the Phantom arrives, he hears the lies and propaganda being spewed out by the hateful bigots. When the Phantom stands up to them, they turn to violence, but they soon realize that was a very short and rough road to take. It turns out that the local emperor and Count Jacob are in the business of trying to create a man-made full-sized adult human being. Their experiments are, of course, leading to naught. But rumor has it that there is a secret Jewish spell that can create a golem, and Count Jacob won't rest until he gets his hands on it. Is there really a golem, or is it some other mysterious figure in the night protecting the refugees?
Not much has changed. Jews are
No,
still,
very typical, very topical at the moment, isn't it?
Isn't it?
yes. And, people hate each other back then and they still hate each other back now. Um, so look, this is a lot heavy. This story is a lot heavier. It's like there's a lot more adult type of themes. There's a lot more words. The art is a lot darker. It's not colorful. Um, I thought Hans drew like these bad guys, like this priest here on page 87. Like the way he drew this priest was just like, the devil incarnated, really. Um, so he's done a great job drawing that. I think I prefer my monster stories is that there's something has happened, but there's still a little bit of air of mystery to it. So it's like, did something happen? What happened? Not really sure. Let's just keep that hanging there and you have to use your imagination. And I think I like my monster stories like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like hang on, I've forgotten his name. Alfred Hitchcock way of doing things. Don't show the monster, just
Mm.
allude to the fact that there's one.
Mm.
Let your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
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 And there may or may not be. Yeah.
And the other thing that I really like about this story was I love the ending where the Jewish priest that the Phantom kind of gives the runaround, at the end, just before he jumps on the plane, out pops the good Mark necklace, And he's like, "Oh, where did you get that from?" And it's like, "Oh, I get a feeling I might be seeing him later on," and we haven't seen him yet. So yeah, it's just I really did enjoy that ending. It allowed room for a sequel without needing there to be a sequel, but it allowed room for there to be a sequel. So I did like that ending as well.
Out of the Team Fantom stories that have been included in this annual, this is my favorite of them.
Yeah, yeah, this is my favorite as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then probably the Mummy one next, and then the
Oh,
Vampire one.
before we get to those, we need to step through the Kuma the Creature story by Felmang. So this is the longest story in the annual, a whopping 49 pages. It's a bit of an epic. Now, Jeremy, you've got a note here that you think this story might have been drawn over a decade ago, and has just been sitting in the files, waiting to find the right place to print it.
Yes. Now I'm not 100%, don't have 100% confirmation on that, but from what I understand, is that Felmain created some of these stories, and I believe it's the ones that are currently out and through as well, which we'll review in probably our next February, March Comics and News podcast. He wrote a lot of these stories. Egmont, for whatever reason, I think this was about the time where they were cutting back on news stories. They didn't accept them or didn't purchase them. And when Frew started producing their own stories, I believe that the Frew crew purchased a lot of these stories, and they've just been sitting around waiting to be republished. So yeah, so I don't think these are like created now. I think they were created maybe 10, maybe even 20 years ago.
Perhaps having a 50-page Phantom story that has a monster in it. This might have been the linchpin for the idea of the Monsters Annual. Let's see what we can pack around this one and put into a package. Anyway, Steve, what's the plot of Kuma the Creature?
All right, Kuma the Creature by Felmang. After skiing on the ocean, Diana and the Phantom become shipwrecked on an unfamiliar shore. After resting, the Phantom sets out in search for food. During this time, a local tribesman has found Diana and taken her back to the village. The Phantom follows the trail to the village, where he's caught and imprisoned with Diana. Diana is then taken to be sacrificed to Kuma, the swamp creature, who doesn't seem to be that bad, actually. Even so, Diana contemplates plunging a sword through its defenseless heart as it sleeps. After escaping, the creature once again captures Diana, but then he helps her to free the Phantom. Is Kuma a nice swap creature after all, or does he have an ulterior motive to his actions? Just be sure to watch out for that volcano. Now, I must say, fellas, when I was writing that little plot, I was trying to make it sound as good as I possibly could. I hated this story. This story was a bunch of crap. When you're saying, this is the reason why we had a monster annual, just so we can get this out and what can we pack around it. Everything you packed around it is absolute quality compared to the rubbish that this is. Apart from the art. The art is fantastic. Love the art. The storytelling is rubbish and should never have been printed in the annual.
Wrong words,
Oh,
Dan. Anything you want to add to that?
well, I agree. I agree, to be fair. I think I might have messaged you guys after I read this one going, Felmang is a fantastic artist. And as you've just said there, Steve, a lot of the artwork in this is sensational. And you can tell that Felmang is drawing what he loves. As far as artists, as far as authors go and as writers go, Felmang makes a fantastic artist. What you've just said as your synopsis there, Steve, actually, I was thinking as you read it, this actually sounds interesting. Has Steve read the same story that I have? 49 pages.
It's 49 pages. It takes 10 pages just to get shipwrecked on the island.
Yeah.
It drags so long. We're talking about Diana before being an able, detective and all that type of stuff and able to, do things. And here she is, that damsel in distress. And it is rubbish. And the way that the tribesmen are depicted, that's so 40s, 50s type stuff, not, today's stuff.
Yeah.
I will admit, probably the thing that disappointed me the most was the way that the tribes people and Diana were portrayed, and
Mm.
to an extent, the Phantom. But in saying that, I did actually, when I went back and read it today, I did actually like this moment on page, what is it, 140, where Diana's about to plunge the sword through Kuma. And then she goes, "Oh, hang on, he, saved me." And I did actually like that. That gave a real human element to Kuma.
So that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Like I thought that was completely out of character for her.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought, nah. That might sound
You're-
hypocritical, but if I came across his art, I would snap it up in an instant. But I really didn't like. I really didn't like the story.
When I first read it, I didn't like it, but then when I was reading it again, I actually did like that moment. So
I
again, I'm
applaud
not
you being
sh
able to read through it all again. That's a
Yeah,
tough read.
it was long. Um, and I'm being devil's advocate here as well. So this story, some people that are a lot more educated in this area than me, reminds them of the movie Black Lagoon. I've never watched it. It's from the 1950s or the 1960s. Those type of movies are very long, epic saga style, which is what this story is. And so this story is a homage to that. That's probably why I don't get it, because a lot of the 50s and 60s movies to me are snorefests. Sorry for all those older people that like those type of movies, but I don't. I guess, we talked about first Golem story. My daughter, my 10-year-old, appealed to it. I appealed to some of these other stories, and maybe some of the older readers, like Dan's age and older. Um, sorry, Dan. Um,
I'll tell you
you
what,
know,
young whippersnapper, I'm going to get my walking stick and come after you.
maybe they enjoy it because it brings some memories of, like those type of movies and stuff like that. Now, again, if you're on YouTube, you will see this. This is actually a comment that we actually got from Carl Michaelius, which I'm not sure if is an alias or not. But he said that Kuma the creature, as well as Ghost and the Wolf, are his two favorite stories of the annual. And he actually says that he actually wishes that it was actually longer. So,
This
I
story,
th- yeah. So I thought the reason why I'm highlighting this comment is because it brings a nice counterbalance or a nice mirror of what some of your comments are, that this was too long, rah, rah. Here's a fan who actually wishes it was longer, and he actually really enjoyed it. It was one of his more favorited stories from the
see,
annual.
and that's the beauty of any of this. Everything is subjective. I didn't like it.
Yes,
Another person really did.
yes.
Fantastic, awesome.
But I will say I
Every story is
didn't,
not going to
yeah,
appeal to everyone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Great way. But I think Frew need to do a better job at censoring the way that natives are portrayed in some of these stories.
I guess they
Um,
do have their disclaimer right at the start about historical content and presented in its original form. But yeah, this is not a historical story. So
hmm.
yeah,
And I didn't like this bit here where you've got the Phantom basically trying to kill Kuma. And I understand he's got his woman, he's got his, fiance and stuff like that. And, you got to protect it. But the Phantom, or the Phantom that I know, and I'm reminded of the story of the Phantom in a very similar situation with its Huz. When he first encounters Huz, he doesn't get the gun and actually shoots him. He shoots near him to startle him, which is then when Huz goes, "Ah, what's that noise?" and then turns around and falls down the cliff and thinks that he's killed him. So while the Phantom has done the same, he doesn't try and kill him with his own actions. And so I think there's a little bit of a difference there, and I would have preferred the Phantom behave like that than getting a spear and being a horrible shot, and instead of getting him in the heart, get him in the shoulder.
And until you just mentioned it then, I didn't realize this, but this would have been a perfect spot for his story.
Instead of Kuma. There's no Lee Falk stories in this annual. I would have thought that even if you want to have one of the shorter his stories, then you could have fit it in the annual. But anyway, I'm with you, Steve. I think we've spent well and truly long enough talking about Kuma, the creature. The next story is The Mummy's Curse by Jan Lundstrom and art by Jamie Valvey. It is a reprint story. It was first published in Sweden in 1976, and I would imagine sometime in the 80s by Frew, after Frew did start publishing some of the Egmont stories. Steve,
Actually,
take us through The Mummy's Curse.
So I'll just quickly cut in. It was the 1990s, and I believe it was issue 1109 from memory.
That's
Got a
an
good memory.
encyclopedic memory.
The Mummy's Curse. An Egyptian exhibition is doing the rounds of major museums. With Diana in town on UN business, she tags along for a visit to the Manhattan Museum to take some blood samples from the 5, or is it 6, mummies in the exhibition. However, when they turn up after hours, you can't interrupt the patrons during the day, Dr. Kenatara, whom Diana is assisting with the blood samples, gets knocked out and a mummy disappears, along with some papyrus scrolls and clay tablets that the museum doesn't seem to think much of. The exhibition then heads to London, where more hijinks occur, and this time it's Diana waits. After all this commotion, the exhibit heads back to Cairo. Will Diana, who is now joined by the Phantom, get to the bottom of this mummy mystery? Is it just a spate of opportune robberies, or is there really a curse on the tomb of Ramenhotep II? Can the Phantom rescue Diana before she's beyond the point of no return? I think this story suffered coming after the Felmang. It was a tough haul for me to get through this. I reckon it took me 3 or 4 sittings to get through this, which might sway my opinion on it. So, what do you fellas think of it?
Well, see, I was quite the opposite. I found this such a relief after the filming that I really enjoyed it. To be fair, I think because I didn't sit down and read the annual in one go. It was good bedtime reading for probably a week to get through it. The filming story, my eyes were drooping by the time I got to the end of it. The next night, I picked up the book and read The Mummy's Curse and really enjoyed it. So I found it a good sort of a detective story with Diana doing most of the detecting. The idea of someone, this is one of those stories I sort of alluded to right at the start, where there's not really a monster in the story, but there's talk of monsters and could it be's. So I liked the way this one came together, and it's probably more a Diana story than it is a Phantom story.
Yeah, well, it doesn't rock up until like 20 pages into 18 pages into the to the actual story. It's interesting you say that, because I remember reading the forum letters back in the day in the 90s when, as teenagers you had plenty of time to be able to, reread all these forum letters. And I remember there was one writer who actually panned this story because the Phantom didn't appear until like page 18, and then it was in his Mr. Walker alias outfit. So it's interesting that you said that, and then remembering that back, 20, 30 years ago as well. So but yeah, no, look, I enjoyed it. I liked the fact that there wasn't a monster, but there was indication of a monster. And I really enjoyed the ending about how he dies, Diana gets captured, and Devil figures it out, and then
Saves the day.
yeah, I really enjoyed the ending.
Well, with you guys both giving a positive review, I'm going to go back and read it again.
Very good.
Because I think you will, and the artwork's pretty good as well.
Yeah.
It is. All right. Well, speaking of the artwork, Jamie Valvey is the artist for The Vampire in Carpathia, which is the next story as well. This one's by Alf Granberg. This is the first time it is in a Frew comic, even though it was first published by the Swedes back in 1979. No, 70, 79? 76 it says in the book. Fantomen 1 of 1976. So this, believe it or not, Jim, this story is older than me, and it's the first time we're seeing it in Fru.
Oh, crikey. It is.
Oh, I love the fact that you play that up, Dan. I did have one person come to me once and say, "Why do you tease Dan about being old? He's not actually that old."
No, but he's the oldest of us.
That's it. All right. So, Steve, take us through the plot for Vampire in Carpathia.
Okay. Are vampires real or just the product of one nasty acid trip? Surely, if someone can develop vampirism, there's surely got to be a cure, even if it is in 1875. Some people will go to great lengths in order to keep their family home. Will the Phantom be able to stop the perpetrator in time, or will he feel the bite that has ended those who have come before him?
I have mixed feelings about this story. Like, I enjoy parts of it. I enjoy the fact that, there's not really vampires, but it's, like you said, Steve, it's an acid trip or, whatever. But I could understand why Jim Shepard never published this. Some of the artwork is amazing. The way Jamie Valve draws women, especially like this panel here on page 202, she's gorgeous there. And then you've got the guy, straight away, he's the bad guy who's going to be, just the way by he's drawn on page 202. It's just, I'm not sure how I feel about this story.
I'm in the same mind actually, Jim. Yeah, do I like it or don't I like it? I'm not sure. I don't want to be on the fence. I probably didn't like it when I first read through it, but just like the Mummy's Curse, I'm prepared to give it another go.
Yeah, I didn't mind this one. Again, it was a bit of a detective. I liked the idea that it is exploring one of the places that would go on to become a phantom hideout around the world, the Vakul castle. And this is his first time that was there. In terms of it being a monster or not a monster, it certainly finishes in a quite dramatic way. It's got that similar to what you talked about there before, Germ, about the Phantom juicing up. Is that the case? Is that how vampirism occurs? I enjoyed this enough to go back and read it again. Certainly. I was just going to say one interesting thing I did pick up about, and I guess it's Jamie Valve's art. He, like a lot of artists, and certainly Cy Barry would be well and truly amongst them, he's got certain go-to poses, and it was interesting seeing, so on page 187, there's the Phantom diving to get through a closed door, and that's in the Mummy's Curse story, and then almost exactly the same pose in page 210 in the Vampire in Carpathia story. So these are drawn years apart, but the one in the left of the screen there is a repeat from a almost an exact copy of a panel in the previous story.
No, that's good pickup. We talked about it before, or well, I talked about it before with the accelerant and the match, and it kind of had that Constantine, gimmicky. This was really gimmicky where you've got the Phantom, he's about to get bitten by vampires. What does he do? Go pick up a cross and no, like honestly, like what's the cross gonna actually do? That
Well,
was a
that's the
little,
vampire thing, mate. Everyone knows
yeah,
that
but
vampire can. And if he knows he's battling some type of vampire, so he's got to have something handy like that.
yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just very gimmicky. And I thought this bit here, this is probably the part I didn't like about the story, which is, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna suck the neck out of this girl," and he talks about it, and he's like, "Oh, hang on, I am gonna do it, but I can see that the Phantom's coming, so let me talk about it for a little bit longer, so that way you have time to come in, then we can have an epic fight, and then that way you can save the day, and I'll try again later." It was a little bit either get in there and do it, or just,
It's like the Incredibles, you got me monologuing,
yeah.
that page you were just on, I thought he looks like the Elvis vampire.
Yes.
But thank you very much.
Well, Elvis was still alive at this stage.
Yes.
That's how old it is. Um,
That-
but no, so for me, while that was gimmicky, I think I preferred the fact that he is drinking something to give him vampire-like reactions rather than being an actual vampire. So I think I prefer that. Um, and like the artwork's amazing. Um, like like
For me,
it's
the artwork really built for me. I thought that through the first half of the story, it really was just a lot of talking heads in a way. I really liked the. I was starting to worry about, oh, this is not a very active, or there's not a lot of action in this story. It really built through the latter half. So
mm,
that brings us to the last story in the book, The Creature from the Black, and for not for the first time, we've got a short Dean Rankin story closing out a compilation book. Was it the 75th anniversary comic that we've
yep,
had, the Dean Rankin and Jeremy McPherson silent story? This one's not,
yeah.
but it is another Dean Rankin story. We've got Marcelo Baez as the artist, and I think this would be the first time we've seen Marcelo as story artist. We've seen him as a cover artist for a few Phantoms in the past, but only a little 5-pager, but there's plenty of plot in there, Steve.
There is. So Namdi's daughter is missing, and the Phantom has tracked her trail to the lagoon. Fearing the worst, the Phantom dives in, hoping to find something that will bring her father some semblance of peace. However, what he finds is completely unexpected. Namdi's daughter is alive and well and sheltering in a cave. But are the girl and the Phantom the only two beings here, or is there something else lurking in the dark? And is it friend or foe?
This is my favorite of the three created stories.
Oh, right.
The three
The
by
ones at the
Andrew
start.
Constant, one by
Mm.
Phil Mang, and this one. This is my best. This is the one that I like the most out of all of the three created stories. I enjoy the artwork. I thought Marcelo's done a great job with the art, and I really enjoyed the what would you call it? The message behind it as well. Just
Don't
like,
judge a book by its cover.
yeah, just because they look different. And it's a lot of the times it's the adults that make the prejudgment, and it's the children that show a lot of the time what it is to be, a true friend and stuff like that. And it's nice in a sense to be able to see, the roles kind of change where it's the Phantom being taught about not judging and being welcome and stuff. It's a timely reminder for the Phantom. So I thought it was, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I think where Kuma the creature went wrong, this went right in far
Yes.
fewer pages.
Yeah,
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 it's
I agree with that.
it's almost like it's the same creature, like the Black Lagoon type of, feel and stuff like that. But it's, that, just because we look different doesn't mean we can't be friends. Or just we can't function together and stuff like that. And yeah, it was a really good message, a timely message. And it was a great way to end the annual of, like, yeah, okay, we've got the monsters and stuff like that, but
I completely agree with you, Jim. I will pick you up, I suppose. The Phantom didn't get a chance to misjudge this creature because the first he saw of it, it was attacking him from behind and sinking its teeth into his shoulder. So I can understand why he probably wanted to turn and roundhouse it in the first instance. But in terms of your point about Marcelo's artwork, within 2 or 3 pages, he has got this vicious looking swamp monster that on the last page looks all forlorn and sad and not quite like a cuddly, a toy that one of your daughters might have on the shelf there behind you, sitting next to Pooh Bear, but but certainly a lovely creature nonetheless.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if one of my daughters bring home a guy looking like that, I'll probably be doing what the Phantoms have been doing as well. And everything that I just said for the last 5 minutes will be well and surely out the door. You don't have to worry about that, Steve.
Very good. So Whole package. Then we've gone over all of the stories in the annual. Where would you give that? Well, you and I are both school teachers, Steve and Jeremy. You remember being in school. Where would you? What grade would you give this? A plus through to E minus. Where does this sit for you? You know, a pass? Is it just a pass? Is it better than that? Where do you have this as a whole package?
Probably a B plus for me.
Yeah, that's
Um,
where I've gone B plus as well. So as soon as you gave me that type of ranking, I went B plus. There are some parts in there that are A to A plus, but then there's others that bring the grade down, and a solid B plus.
the Kuma story is probably the weakest out of all of the stories. I enjoyed elements of it, but it was probably the weakest. As we talked about at the beginning, not having the gaps or the table of contents, just is those type. They're the type of little features that kind of gets you in the A area. And I enjoyed the color. It would have been nice if Marcelo Baez's story could have been published in color as well. It kind of felt like it almost needed to be in color, like with some of the tones and stuff like that. Yeah, I also like the fact that there was only two reprint stories. So, and they were published in the 80s and the 90s. So, majority of readers probably haven't remembered even reading that. So, for a lot of people, these are 8 new stories. If we didn't have the replica, we could have maybe squeezed in a Who's story, which might have been nice for some of the Forkers to be able to see a Fork story in there. But they're kind of probably the only reasons why I wouldn't go in the A industry. What about you, Dan?
I was probably more a flat B. Again, probably right from the outset, not a Monsters fan. But look, if the three of us are sitting around the teacher lounge moderating papers, and you guys come at me with a B plus and I'm at a B, I'm happy to accept the B plus and give it that grade. Well, not least of which, so we can all go home and enjoy a cup of coffee.
Spoken like a true teacher.
Absolutely. No. Look, it stood up really well, and you made the point right at the start, Jem, about the themed annuals that have been coming out since about that 2016, 2017 mark with the current Frew crew taking over, and I think it stands up well in those themes. Probably the Phantom War annual would be one of my favourites, along with the Girl Phantom one that you suggested. Monsters is probably, I don't know. Yeah, it's up there. It's better than the Cowboy one for mine. But yeah, without actually sitting down to rank them, I think it stands up well amongst them.
Cowboy one had some really average stories because it had stories from the Turkey, which were, pretty poor. But that was interesting from a historical point of view. But these stories from the monster as a collective were much better than the Cowboy one. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, gents. I've really enjoyed a bit of a deep dive on a single issue, and our next podcast we'll probably get back to a bit of a regular transmission where we're looking at comics and news. And there's unbelievably there's been 3 Frew comics come out since this one, so looking forward to catching up with you guys again soon to dive back into the comics and news. To all of the listeners and the watchers, thanks so much for listening or watching us. As I said at the start, our website is chroniclechamber.com. Please get in touch with your thoughts about anything we've said. Maybe you want to agree with Steve, or maybe you want to leap to the fence of Romano Felmang and Kuma the Creature. Either way, email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We love to hear your thoughts and your feedback, your opinions on all of the social media platforms as well. So comment on the YouTube channel or any of the Facebook posts that go up. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast app, including iTunes or Spotify. So thanks very much for tuning in this week, guys. And until next time, happy fandoming.
I look forward to your letters. Happy fandoming.
Happy fandoming, all stay safe.
Follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find